why this topic is of interest to me. So I'm the kind of person who's always writing and thinking and teaching about the stuff that's coming up for me. When I was dating, I wrote Truth in Dating. When I had experienced a couple of divorces in my 20s, I wrote The Couple's Journey, interviewing a whole bunch of couples to see how they were doing it, see what I could learn from them. So now I'm 83. So guess what? I'm interested in aging. Finally, this topic hasn't been salient for me, except for maybe the past 5 years or so. So lucky me in a way. But now I'm really interested in things like loss and coming to terms with my whole life and how I did my life. Did I have a meaningful life, at least in my own estimation, those kinds of things. So I'm inviting other people to do it with me because that deepens my experience of this issue, and it helps me learn and learn from you guys. And if you've got sound going on in your background, would you please make sure you're muted now? Thank you. Okay, there will be a show of hands right now. That doesn't have to do with loss. I just want to ask a few questions that gives me a sense of who's here. So if you can turn your screen on, that's great. That's not required. But I want you to raise your physical hand if this is true for you. I think the Zoom hand doesn't work so well when people are viewing the recording. So raise your physical hand if you are under the age of 50. And let's give a chance to see who's here. Under the age of 50. Okay. Between the ages of 50 and 60. Between 60 and 70. And between 70 and 80. Okay. And how many people are over 80 like me? All right. Really getting a look at people. Thank you. Oh, one other question. How many people have read one of my recent Substack articles about the developmental tasks of the final stage of life? Can I see that? Thanks. And how many people have seen the couple of other videos of this topic, of me talking about this topic, that are on YouTube? Anybody? Thank you, a few people. All righty. So each time I talk about this, I do it in a different way. So today is going to be different than those. So my aim today is to guide us in some self-reflection questions. Toward the end, maybe share some ideas about how we're handling certain things. And first, I want to define a couple of terms here to give you some context. So I talk about the developmental tasks. Well, what's development? Let me start with that. What's development? Ordinarily, we think of development as an expansion of your capacities and abilities. But deeper than that, I think it's your expansion of your capacity to adapt to whatever life throws at you. So yes, we are, some of us, declining in some of our physical abilities, our cognitive abilities and so forth. I'm admitting somebody here. But how you're adapting, there's still a lot of adapting to do at this stage of life. In fact, it could be some of the most difficult adapting that you'll ever have to do. Those of you who are younger, you know, like we have some things to share with you that kind of gives you an idea of how you, I would say it's good to do this personal work, start to do this work now, such as coming to terms with how you were handled as a child and what your inheritance was, both biologically and what culture you were born into, what race you were born into, coming to terms with all those things while you're young, because you need your energy for other things when you get older, other adaptations, as you will see as we go along. So now, one of the biggest things we have to adapt to is dealing with loss. So I'm going to do some show of hands stuff here. I want you to raise your physical hand if this particular kind of loss is up for you or you're dealing with it now in some way. So first, raise your hand if you're dealing with loss of physical function in some way, whether it's abilities like to see or hear, or just loss of strength, muscle mass. Okay, let's see the show of hands. How many people are dealing with that? And I'm going to be in this too. Okay. Thanks. It's better to raise your physical hand because I think the Zoom hand doesn't show in the recordings. Okay, how many people are dealing with things like loss of beauty or looks, that kind of thing? And it's kind of up for you if you're willing to admit that. I would say so, yeah. Okay, thank you for that one. How many are dealing with loss of kind of like ease in your body or physical pain, actual physical pain? I got some self-talk here. Not that many. Okay. How many people have, and maybe you've had this for quite a while if you raise your hand on this one, a physical condition that limits you, but it's not visible to others? Because that's its own kind of challenge. And a lot more of that kind of thing does happen when we're older. It's not visible. It's like sometimes I say, I look healthier than I really am because I have a blood disease and you can't see that. How many people are dealing with the loss of friends or loved ones? Okay, thanks for that one. How about the loss of sexual interest or abilities in some way? How about cognitive ability? Not maybe complete loss, but you notice some decline in cognitive ability. Again, I would have expected even more hands on that one. Thank you. How about loss of independence in some way, along with the need to accept help? That's a big one. Learning to accept help when you really need it. And that's another one where if that's hard for you when you're young, it's going to be hard for you when you're old. How many of us who are dealing with that learn to do that earlier, or we're just having to learn it now? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on that one, but it's just, we can learn that one at any time, but some of us don't learn it until we like really need it, and then it's harder. How many people are dealing with feeling less useful? Thank you. How about regrets? Dealing with some regrets as you look back on your life. Thanks. How many people are somehow facing that feeling of not enough time? Time's running out. Oh, that's a lot. And how about too much time? You could raise your hand twice. I mean, again, on that one, for some of you, how many people are dealing with feeling like there's like too much time? What do I do with my time? How do I structure it? I'm looking at Anne and I'm going, you're young, Anne. Okay, thank you. How many people are dealing with something that has to do with knowing how or when to slow down or when to retire? Like it's up for you right now. How much to slow down?
Nourishing.
Thank you.
Fascinating travels.
How about when to give up on some favorite pastime? Like, is it time to stop playing tennis? Or is it time to stop jogging or hang gliding? That's a joke, that last one. Okay, some of you dealing with that. And kind of along with that, how many people are dealing with the question of, do I work harder to maintain my ability to do this? Or to not lose muscle mass, let's say? Do I go to the gym and work out more? Or do I kind of not work so much on it? Like, how much do I work on it? I mean, the balance point's different from each of you, but how many people are actually dealing with that now? I know I am. Okay, thanks. And the last one on my little show of hands thing is how many people are dealing with the paperwork to help your survivors, such as, and it could be just on your mind and you're not doing anything about it, but such as a will or a trust, your medical directive, healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney. Are these terms even familiar to some of you? There's a lot of paperwork that we're advised to do if we want to make life easier for our survivors, what to do with my body. So how many people are dealing with some of that kind of stuff and either taken it on or if you've already done it, you're not dealing with it. Okay. But how many people are somewhere in the middle of that one? Okay. Thanks, you guys. So we're all practicing adapting to loss in some way. And I sometimes say that death, which for me is what all this is in preparation for, death is the ultimate letting go. So it's kind of a question of how well do I let go? And have I begun to let go voluntarily of certain things like my stuff? That's a big one. And I'm gonna, I think, change the view on this now and put myself here for a while. How's that? Well, that's not working. Okay. I'll go back to the other view. Yeah. So we're going to stick with this. I'm up here, but I'm going to present for a little while. So I mentioned letting go of things voluntarily, like giving away your stuff. So now I'm just going to have you reflect silently without comment for a while on a few of the things that I'm going to be talking about. So there's this letting go voluntarily, and then there's kind of the stuff we were talking about earlier. Some of it was intentional, like getting your paperwork in order, and some of it, like, it just happened to you. You started forgetting things, so you had to deal with that in some way. So just reflect now on what you're doing, if anything, to let go of things voluntarily. And this is particularly for people in the latter range of those of you, no, the latter age range of those of you who have joined this call. But it shows you the kind of things that are up for me, at least.
Wishing you beautiful adventures.
So whoever's speaking, could you mute yourself? Thanks. In a sense, I'm kind of dealing with a reverse bucket list. Now it's all the things I want to let go of, the things that I don't need anymore. So it's kind of a question for me. So I have given away a lot of clothes, and I gave away all my earrings to some of my family members and girlfriends recently. I would take all my earrings to different gatherings, or when people would come over, I'd say, take earrings. And then my grandchildren came in from New York, and I gave them the rest. So, earrings are gone. That's one of the things I let go of, is it just kind of bothers my ears. Again, could you guys mute yourself? Those talking in the background.
Hi. Hi. The hardest work I've ever
So
done.
there's another kind of
Yeah.
letting go. Wait, I
Hi.
need to deal with this person.
I
And
hope to see
can
you.
anybody see? I could mute
It's
all.
Jessica
I can mute all.
Fergus.
I just,
Jessica Fergus.
yeah.
A lot of difficult.
So you can still hear me, right? Can you wave? Yeah, you can still hear me, and I've muted everybody else. So I'm bringing up the idea of preparing for death by letting go of some of your external stuff. We talked some about like letting go of like trying to maintain your muscle mass, or letting go of things you had to let go of, like friends and who have passed and that sort of thing. But there's a whole lot you can do voluntarily. So I'm now looking at, what will I no longer do? What are the things that I'm just choosing to let go of? So I mentioned I'm choosing to let go of wearing earrings. I mean, that's mundane, but reflect for yourself for a moment. What are you choosing to let go of at this stage, whether it's activities or stuff? Are you letting go of certain doings? We already mentioned, like, the issue of retirement. Are you gradually retiring? Did you retire a long time ago or recently? But those are kind of voluntarily letting go of things. And I really want you to feel how that feels. And of course, at any age, you let go of certain things. You move on from a job or a relationship, and sometimes that's voluntary and sometimes it's not. But there's a necessary kind of letting go of this. Even the thing about wearing earrings anymore. They just sort of started to bother me a little bit, because you know, I've pierced ears. They started bothering me, and I go, well, what do we need this for? So there's a definite letting go of uh, a certain kind of concern about how I look. I still try to look my best, but it's not the same as when I was younger, or the identification with looks. And that's been, for me, kind of easy and voluntary. And it actually feels fine. It was never a big deal for me. So things that, I think I'm letting go of, maybe I was never that attached to them anyway. So I have to question everything I say here, because, you make these generalizations about yourself, and I'm giving you a chance to maybe look a little deeper. Was that letting go actually voluntary, or was it forced in some way? So in a sense, there's a cleaning up that's going on, cleaning up like not so you won't leave a mess, like cleaning up of your stuff, letting go of stuff. And then there's this inner letting go. What old dreams have I let go of? What old dreams have you let go of? Things that you thought you would do, but now you realize you won't. Or things that were really aims of your life, like finding true love or finding work that was really fulfilling. Well, those are usually two aims for a lot of people. And whatever stage we're at now, if we're young, we're not going to let go of that yet, but at certain stages, and it may be that time for you, and it may not be. Oh, people find true love at 90. So I'm not saying there's an age appropriate time to do each one of these things, but they become more salient as time runs out. And you have to kind of come to terms with, what dreams did I think I would do? So many of my friends were going to write a book, but they're finally, this one friend is 90 and he's really declining. And he had to say, I guess I'm not going to write that book. And for him, that's a grief process. So how about yourself? And how about coming to terms with how your childhood was, what the atmosphere was in your family of origin? That's one of the biggest things that I find takes up people's attention at this stage of life is, do I really know myself? Have I really accepted who I am, what I was and was not able to do with my life? Now, this is a big one. And have I accepted, but particularly right now, I'm more focusing on, have I accepted the hand I was dealt, the givens of my life, the parents that I was born into, and how that affected me? And there's probably going to be some unfinished business there. I kind of jokingly say to some of my groups, you'll die with unfinished business. We're not going to be able to complete all of that perfectly in terms of completely accepting everything that we weren't able to do or weren't able to have as a child. But have you grieved that? Most of my clients, I would say, we do work, because I still do coaching / psychotherapy. And we do a lot of inner child work, and people come to terms with how painful their childhood was and how overwhelming in some ways, how they were expected to be able to do things that were beyond their actual age. For example, critical parents, absent parents, overly controlling parents. I mean, or a sibling who wasn't nice to you, school age kind of traumas, not being as smart as the other kids. So also coming to terms with kind of your intellectual capacity as well as your emotional care that you received. The grief is what I'm getting at, is like feeling, wow. Most of my clients actually get to something like, wow, there was there was more potential in me than I was supported in actualizing, or at least, I'm 30 or 40 right now, and it's harder than it would have been if I'd had more support and more safety when I was a little person. I'm still working against all the weight that my childhood kind of placed on my shoulders, and being able to feel for yourself, if there was some of that, some deficit that was like an important emotional developmental need that wasn't met. And feeling, I mean, if you feel you've completely like worked through that and overcome that, or that hasn't bothered you, I mean, a lot of people grow up with deficits in their childhood and they don't even seem to be bothered by that. But people who come to me are a little more sensitive type people. I mean, there's a range of how sensitive people are to the inner pain that's maybe in there somewhere. But the kind of people who come to my webinars are usually a little more on a sensitive side. They feel more. And I'm encouraging you to at least consider the idea of grieving for that loss or that lack. It's just the potential that wasn't able to fully be realized because there was so much other weight that I was working against or working with. So just consider that and hold, if there's any grief or regret there, just holding that tenderly. We learn to hold our feelings and like breathe a little bit, open up a space so that we can feel the things that are hard to feel, supported by our own self, supported by that inner compassionate mother, good mother archetype is the way I think of it. There's actually a good mother part of all of us, and that's the part that knows what feels good, even if you didn't have a great mother. There's an inner sense. It knows what feels good, knows when you're getting your needs met. And that's also the part that can say, oh, honey, you didn't really get that need met. And that hurts. And I'm here with you. I'm not abandoning you. So we learn over the course of this kind of grief work to support ourselves, to grieve with ourselves, to hold a bigger space, and to know that that's not all of me. That wound is not all of who I am. So that kind of inquiry is, I think, an important part of this latter stage of life if you haven't been doing that all along. And the more you have been doing that at a younger age, you'll be in a lot better shape when you get to be my age. In my recent blog, I mentioned my grandfather, who got very paranoid when he went into his 70s and 80s. I'm not sure what age he was, but when I was like about, I don't know, in my mid-20s, I had just become a psychologist, and I was looking at his behavior, how anybody who would come to the door, he would make up a story about them wanting something from him. You know, they're here to get the best of me. Now, that was always part of his personality, but he never looked into it. He never questioned his assumptions about that kind of thing. And so it didn't, but he had defense mechanisms, because I knew him for a long time, you know, my grandfather, and he had defense mechanisms, like he would know enough not to speak about it. But as you get older, your energy for inhibiting the things that you like shouldn't do or say. I mean, we hear about people getting sexually wild in nursing homes. There really is something, there's research that's come out that there really is something that happens in the brain where I don't know if it's your synapses get thinner, but there's something that it disinhibits impulses. You're not able to inhibit some of these like wild impulses that are in some of us. And in a way, what we want to do is heal the beliefs in those paranoid thoughts and look into those. Where did those come from? Get past those, get a bigger, wider angle view on life rather than caught in one little fear story. But my grandfather didn't do that. So he's acting out some of his unfinished childhood business in a very obvious way as he gets older. And I just made up my mind. I'm not going to let that happen to me. I'm going to start this inner work sooner. another part of like cleaning up is having important conversations with people that you have unfinished business with. Now, I'm not saying you should clean up every single one of those relationships. Some of them are impossible. And I get quite a number of requests from like mothers whose adult children have, they're estranged from their adult offspring. The mother is incredibly heartbroken by this. But before I take on that kind of a client, like a two-person client where one person wants the intervention and the other person doesn't, I mean, both people have to be willing to at least talk to me. And most of the time, frankly, I have said, I don't see this as a situation that I can mediate. I refuse certain clients where I don't think I can help. And but that, I often try to refer them to somebody else. But that's a heartbreaking experience. And just coming to terms with that, letting go when that's your story. So you will die a lot of us will die with some unfinished business. And sometimes it's a joke, but right now it's not a joke. I mean, some of us are dealing with tough unfinished business, and when to let go of trying and when to just grieve it. No, that's a question for each of you. And now I want to go back and talk about fears about aging, and go into another show of hands exercise so that we can all see what are some of the fears that have to do with aging and dying. Just something's popping into my head. What Woody Allen said once is, I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens. So he's not afraid of death. There's a Moody Blues phrase, I'm not frightened of dying. Any time will do. So there really is a lot of difficulty in our culture facing up to the losses that we think we're going to experience, or possibly are experiencing, but we're still fearing it happening more and more. So this is about the most common fears about aging that I have heard, and I'm going to just get your show of hands on this one. So how many people have a fear about feeling useless? Okay, thank you. Feeling invisible. How about a fear of dying alone? I'm going to slow down with that one. Yeah, feel that. I think the more we can feel the things as we think them, we're moving emotional energy that actually helps us integrate the fact that that's in us. So giving it a little more attention. Anytime an emotion comes up, I always recommend that people, like, they speak the words, but are you actually letting yourself feel some of it in a conscious way? Because this actually helps get past some of these things, or integrate them. When I say get past, I mean get past the fear part being so strong. And when I say integrate, I mean those pieces of yourself, those fears, come into right relationship with the whole of your being when you can feel. So integration is that all my parts can talk to each other. That's the definition in systems theory of a healthy system, good communication between subparts. And that's the integration process. And that can happen within an individual person system. How many people are fearing or have some trepidation about possibly being put in a nursing home or having to go to a nursing home, whatever that is? Fears of that. That's another pretty stark one for some of us. How about my spouse dies, my partner dies before me? Hmm. How about my spouse becomes disabled and I'm the main caregiver? Spouse, partner, whatever you call the person. Being the main caregiver. Yeah, that's going to require a whole other set of developmental tasks. And I think maybe, I always thought maybe I'd this is one of my things I probably have to let go of, a book about aging couples where one person is able and the other person is disabled. I've seen quite a few of my friends in this situation. And boy, if you didn't have good communication before this challenge came on, you really are in trouble because you need very good, honest, heartfelt communication to be able to say, honey, I'm going to the gym now. And he's saying, no, don't leave me. Don't go. And I really love you. I want to come back as soon as possible, but I'm no good for either of us. Uh, can, you know, can we hug? No, I'm no good for either of us if I don't take care of myself here. And can we hug? Can we talk about this a little bit? But then I'm going, marking boundaries where there's a two-way communication, but you still take care of yourself. That's just imagine yourself having to have that when your partner's saying, don't leave me alone. But these things happen. How many people have fears about all my friends or most of my friends die before I do? I mean, that happened to my dad. Yeah. Running out of money. Thank you. Not being able to see or hear. How many people, I mean, you may not have they might not be realistic fears, but they come up. Like one of mine would be having a stroke. I didn't put that down, but I mean, I often imagine, oh, that would be just horrible for me. And, so things like that, they don't have to be realistic fears, but you have them. Can't walk. How many people have some kind of a fear about losing your walking ability? Yeah. And then if you own your own home, the issue comes up, should I have my house wheelchair accessible? Things like that. That's up for my partner and me right now. He wants to do more architecture on our house. And I say, well, when it gets closer to the time when we're going to have to when that's really going to happen, because I've got this grandiose idea of how good I am at managing contractors, because I've done a lot of managing of contractors, and I think I can get that done in a month. And he's had terrible experience with contractors, and he's saying, no, you got to do it now. And of course, you guys will be able to take sides on this, but I'm not ready. How many people have it's not a fear exactly, but it's well, no, I think I'll skip this one and I'll so we had one about fear of dying alone earlier, and a kind of a counterpart to that one is fear of winding up in my old age with somebody I can't stand. Now, anybody admit to that one? I used to have that one. I don't have it now. I have a great partner, but I haven't had this partner all my life. Yeah, I actually feared that. Actually, when I was 50, I got a divorce from a person who it had been hard for me to divorce him, hard to let go because there were some positive things. But the fear of being still with him when I'm 80 or even 60 motivated me. I actually got myself to end that marriage by fantasizing, how am I going to feel about my life if I'm dying married to this person? And so that's my story. How many people have some kind of a fear of being in chronic physical pain or having a very painful future. I have that one. Okay. So just pause and reflect on the things that are, we'll call them fears for you. These are actually fear thoughts. So they're not actually happening, but they're in us. And just it's, in a way, a thought is not real, but that kind of a thought has an emotional tone to it. And just like the grief about our past, for example, when anything has a kind of painful emotional tone, I recommend holding it with tenderness, breathing, making a space for it to come in, and getting to know it a little more, actually being a little curious about it. Okay, so this fear of dying alone, that's got some tenderness to it. Who else did I see in my family where that happened? Or where might that fear have come from? Or I see it around me. What do I recall? So actual associations. When you have a fear, there are often associations that if you sit with it with kind of curiosity, other images, memories, that kind of thing, or possibly just words and phrases will come into your mind to illuminate your relationship to that issue, your real, more deep relationship to that issue. So were any of those fears salient enough for you to give it that kind of attention right now? Or maybe there's a fear that I didn't mention. So let's just take a couple more breaths, and I'm gonna move on to something that's actually more of the what I can do something about. You know, we've been talking about things that I kind of can't do much about, some of these losses or some of the thoughts and fears that are in my head. Another developmental task of this stage of life is creating new challenges or new opportunities, something interesting, something that brings joy or newness to my life. So it's not all about giving up. What's emerging that's kind of interesting and fun? And of course, for me, it's now looking at this whole process of aging and writing about it. And this is fascinating for me, and it brings me a lot of joy. So what's new? What's new in your world? Uh, if you were a risk taker, I teach emotional risk taking, you know, and I sell these getting real card games that involve a certain amount of emotional risk taking. And I've written in the past about how to start your own couples group, because I belong to two different leaderless couples groups, but I of friends, and I started them, but there's no facilitator, but we go very deep with one another. Oh, one has 3 couples and one has 4 couples, so you need to keep it small. But you know, these are things that I now have more time for. Although, actually, in my case, off and on during my adult life, when I was part of a couple, I would do this. Um, so couples just check in with each other, being witnessed by the rest of the group, and then the rest of the group offers feedback in terms of what they observed while watching the two of you interact. So that's the model that I've been sharing with other people. So the Getting Real card game, you can buy it off my website, but anybody can lead it, and it has self-disclosure questions on these little cards, and there's instructions for different ways to play the game. And but those are emotional risks for people who used to like physical risk, but you had to give something up, but you still like some kind of risk. So I'm just offering those as ideas for like emerging ways to keep challenging yourself. Because I think we do kind of, a lot of us get a little bit of a been there, done that. What are they going to teach me kind of attitude when you've lived as long as I have? Although I personally find, I still find people fascinating and I can learn so much. Um, but my mother was in a nursing home when she was at the end of her life, and there was this one woman who was in a wheelchair, and she'd go around to all the different rooms in the nursing home and start conversations, and she was like this real extrovert, which my mother was not. But my mother could still walk, and I said, Mom, why don't you go around and like meet people to, oh, in here, there's, you're just always by yourself or with family who visit. And she did have a lot of family who visited, but I said, why don't you be more social like that woman? And my mother looks at me and goes, what are they going to tell me? She had a tinge of humor in her, but that cracked me up actually because it was so her, but especially at the final stage of life. I mean, that really got exacerbated or increased her tendencies. Um, so what other challenges? And maybe I could hear from a couple people now because in terms of new things that you're doing, because this can enrich the rest of us. But give it some thought and then raise your hand and unmute yourself if you have something that you find kind of interesting that you didn't have a chance to do before or you didn't do as much of before, but it gives you joy. Marielle, can you unmute yourself and tell
Yeah,
us?
thank you for calling on me, Susan. I just gave notice at my addiction recovery rehab counselor job. So Friday is my last day, and I feel the stress just coming off my body. And I'm hoping I didn't wait too long to quit. So I'm entering into a 3-month sabbatical to just retreat and meditate. But I am now, my next creatively wonderful thing is to become an end of life doula. And I'm going to be trained.
Oh,
On Thanksgiving weekend, I get to see my family for a day and a night, and then they're going to drive me to the training for 3 days in a row in person in San Diego. So I'm so excited by this new career I'm choosing at almost 70 years old. And I'm forgiving myself for not making it to my goal, which was April 4th, 2025 was when I was going to quit, the day before my 70th birthday. So I'm letting that go because my body, and having a heart attack almost a year ago,
wow.
told me it's time to do something different. So, and today my cardiologist said it's fine to go off all my meds and just take a baby aspirin. So I'm just celebrating the joy of, being alive and at this age stage. And I resonated with many of those fears, and I have a lot of inner work to do, especially in this time that I've given myself of 3 months without seeking any new employment, even a part-time job, which I'll eventually need. But anyway, that's what I'm up.
Wow. New career in the 70s. Thank you, Marielle.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Don, you have something, Don Draper.
Yeah, thank you. Boy, this has been a really great group today. I'm really appreciating hearing, just being a part of this group. And one of the things that I've come up with, I mean, I raised my hand for a lot of things today. As I find my physical ability to do things and medical diagnoses and all these things coming on, that what I'm finding is one of the antidotes was, first of all, spending so much time with you, Susan, in honesty salons and learning how to push pause when my buttons get pushed. I mean, that's the number one skill and that's the gift that keeps on giving as you get older. And what I'm finding is that finding ways to be of service. And one of the things I always wanted to do but didn't do was to get more involved in expanding your work out in the world.
Hmm.
And but I'm finding now in another group that's the Waking Down Trillium group that you're
Yeah.
familiar with, that is that we are creating these closed mutuality circles that are peer led. We're moving away, and I loved what you said about your couples groups. Is that there's something about it when people are able to be of service to one another, and so I am quite involved with. I'm on the committee to actually create these things and to tweak them so that people are actually able to get the maximum benefit. So, and on one hand, there's parts of my life, or as I get older, there's a lot of things I can't do anymore. But I don't focus on that. I focus on what can I do? How can I be of service? And so that's something that I just wanted to throw into the mix here.
Good idea. Thanks, Don. One other person had their hand raised, but it isn't Susan Lawrence. I guess yeah, it didn't show on my screen. Susan, you unmute yourself and tell us.
Yes. Hi, everyone. This has been really a wonderful group, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I'm really, really happy that I took the time to join this group.
Thank you.
So I've had a really long career in more than one specialty. I started out as a physician, and then I went to law school, and I still do those things in different ways. But just recently, I got involved in learning how to create a documentary, and I just started working on my first documentary film. I joined a program called The Art of Documentary, and I'm usually not a person who collaborates with people, or I have, unfortunately, I'm a survivor of severe childhood trauma, and I've worked to manage complex PTSD for much of my life. So I usually stay away from that. But so far, this group has just been amazing. And since I'm so new at learning something like that, the other people in the group have been so supportive and giving me advice. And in October, we can participate in creating a 1 day documentary. In other words, we have to film it in 24 hours. We have 2 extra hours to do some like pickup uh, um, filming, and then you enter it, and they have a contest. I'm not really interested in a competition, but the challenge of doing that is extraordinary. So I'm so excited. I'm just so excited. So I'm very happy that I get to share that too. So
I'm happy
thank you.
to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And we're about out of time, so there were quite a few other people who had something to share. If you wouldn't mind writing some of it in your chat, and I can transcribe it and perhaps put it in a future blog, that would be nice. I'm still going to keep writing about this. The next blog is going to be about how you played your hand. Do you have any regrets? How do you feel about your life? And so I'll be looking more into that. So apparently I've been called to just keep writing about this for a while. But I want to end this program with a poem that helps us come to terms with the fact that we cannot conquer every challenge that life throws at us, and hoping that this will help you accept wherever you are right now, and kind of understand a little bit more about this final stage. So here's a poem by Paul Winefield that I want to close with. In the real hero's journey, the dragon slays you. Much to your surprise, you couldn't make that marriage work. Much to your surprise, you turned 40 with no kids, no house, and no prospects. Much to your surprise, the world didn't want the gifts you proudly offered it. If you are foolish, this is where you will abort the journey and start another and another, abusing your heart over and over for the brief illusion of winning. But if you are wise, you will let yourself be shattered and return to the village humbled, but with a newfound sense that you don't have to identify with the part of you that needs to win, needs to be recognized, needs to know. This is where your transcendent life begins. So embrace humility in everything. Life isn't out to get you, nor are your struggles your fault. Every defeat is just an angel tugging at your sleeve, telling you that you don't have to keep banging your head against the wall. Leave that striver there, trapped in his lonely ambitions. Just walk away, and life in its vastness will embrace you. So thank you, everyone, for being here today, for your good attention to me and to each other. And really, really appreciate you for coming today. Yeah, we'll show our appreciation to one another here.
Thank you, Susan. Could you repeat the name of the poem and the
Paul Winefield. Okay, thanks, everyone. I do these every month on the first Tuesday of the month, 10 to 11 Pacific time. And if you're not subscribed to my Substack, it's susancampbell99.substack.com. Just Google me up. You'll find a way to reach me if you need to stay in touch in any way. Thanks for coming. Bye.